Hello, this is the Mae B Mindful Podcast, and I am your host, Hannah Mae. I'm a mother of 6, conscious birth instructor and educator, spiritual growth facilitator, and certified hypnotist. This podcast is about inspiring hope, expanding awareness and consciousness in order to revolutionize the way we live and experience our lives. You can expect thought-provoking episodes each week spanning a range of topics, drawing from both my own journey of transformation and healing and working with others. I hope you find this podcast to be informative, refreshing, illuminating, and instrumental in your own soul's evolution and growth. Let's jump right in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. I am your host, Hannah Mae, and this week is really part 2 on the surrender discussion that we opened up and began to unpack. And this week, I really wanted to dive a little deeper into some of those concepts as far as the benefits, why it's important, the things that maybe block us or make that action feel and seem so elusive and sometimes inaccessible, whether we're just not understanding how to take that action, since it really is oftentimes very much an internal action, and we're so used to affecting change through doing and thinking that we have to exercise this exertion of our will in order to make this change, just do more, when really surrender is about doing less. And while there are some correlating actions that will follow that and that can be aligned with that, it's really not about adding anything new. It's about letting go. And it's about letting go of control, because that, of course, is the opposite of surrender. So what makes surrender important? What it's costing you not to do it, what the blocks and impediments might be that are preventing you from doing it. And a little bit about my experience and journey with this is that, as it has been an ongoing evolutionary process. And of course, with anything that we practice and give our attention to, we'll continue to grow and evolve our understanding. And so my hope is that I will leave this conversation with more awareness as well, and some inspiration along the way. And I hope that it inspires some new facet of this understanding that you may already have in order for you to integrate that into your life to achieve better results with that which you may not be surrendered. Because let's face it, we all got something. And even once we think we've mastered it in one area of our life, I know for me, it's still showing up somewhere. There's somewhere that I'm not letting go. And so it is an allowing, it is a softening, it is an accepting, it is a trusting. After all, and we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, you can't really surrender unless there's something else that you're going to trust, because we're not designed to not have a solution. It would be ridiculous to expect yourself to put down that which you believe is a solution under the guise of the illusion of control, albeit, and then expect yourself to have no safety net, to have nothing that you can trust in. We are these vessels. St. Catherine of Siena, in her conversations with God, what's revealed to her, and the metaphors that are used are really beautiful along the way, but one of them is that where she talks about the climb and the endurance required and the vessel of the heart, and how nothing can remain empty. We're designed to be filled. We are light beings, and so we are designed to be filled with light. And light is the only thing that can really nourish and bring more vibrancy to something that already is light. And so the downside of trying to take this in hand ourselves without this surrender and affect change through control is that not only do we create struggle and resistance and intensify and exacerbate and magnify the problem and create more problems for us, along the way, we clutter up and we sort of pour in and add these false solutions that really just block us and block our intuition. And we're all intuitive beings to some degree. Some people are more sensitive and have more gifting in certain areas than others, but there's such a variety and such a spectrum with this it doesn't really matter. That's not the point. It's, are you able to move into the flow of life? Are you able to move with ease and do this dance with whatever the energy is that's coming through and meeting you in the current circumstance and situation of your life and reality, of which oftentimes you can't control? And if you tried to control it, you'd probably not be acting in accordance with the person that you really want to be, and not experiencing the peace and the synchronicity that life really has to offer when we move into a different place with it and operate and interact with life differently. Regardless of what that area of your life is, it's absolutely applicable to each and every circumstance and situation that you come into contact or conflict with. And the degree of conflict that we're going to experience in these exchanges with life that we have are really going to determine our state of being, how we're feeling, and it's going to be in direct correlation to the degree of acceptance, flow, surrender that we have. This doesn't mean, like I said in the first episode, we lay down our weapons and we let life just steamroll over us. What it means is that we can stop operating from an unaware place, an unconscious place, become open and clear so that we can receive direction on what the right action is and just have a different experience with it. And that's amazing because that can dramatically alter our experience. With the very same circumstance and situation that we were fighting, that we were having a very negative experience with, we can have, on the flip side of that, the exact opposite experience. And I'll share some experiences and examples of that a little later in the episode as relates to different things that just come to mind for me. Okay, so before I get myself too distracted and off topic and derail, just to underpin this a little bit, we know that control is an illusion, right? Like, you know that. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it because if it's working to some degree, we're able to continue to operate in that illusion. And so usually the pain of something has to outweigh the benefit of operating under the illusion of control. And when that happens, we get challenged. And when that happens, as uncomfortable and dysfunctional as that can feel and dysregulated as that can make us, it's actually an incredible gift because that is what is going to push us into new action. If we want a totally different result, we have to take a totally different action. And so practically speaking, that just makes all kinds of sense. And while it's very simple, it's very disconcerting because it means we have to face our fear. And our fear, oh my gosh, is just upholding this most likely basic human instinct that thinks is being threatened, the way we're being seen in the world or whatever. It's not, of course, but we think it is. And if there's some sort of block or a breakdown in what happens if we let go, what happens if we jump, because that could feel like jumping off a cliff sometimes. I know it has for me. Am I going to be caught? Do I trust that I'm going to be caught? I very much align with the belief and idea that surrender is the doorway into the divine, into accessing the divine, into becoming aligned with the divine will for me, where my will aligns with that will, which really wants what's best for me. It just looks a little funny sometimes. And I have to be willing to trust that no matter what it looks like on the surface, that is the case. And so everybody's at a different place with that, and there is a preemptive journey there. So being able to identify and clear those blocks, those obstacles, those fears, really, those beliefs that could be preventing us from taking an action that's really only going to help us is really important to be able to bridge that gap from the place of control to the place of letting go, to the place where we become to where we actually do surrender and can press into something new. So this doesn't just happen magically. We might have to come into trust. We usually have to come into a new awareness through curiosity, through a new understanding. So for example, with childbirth, in order to trust the process, that nature has this in hand, that you don't have to get all up in the middle of it and control it or have anyone else try and control it for you, that you're going to have to come into understanding about what that process is and learn more and self-educate on what that process is in order to trust it. So this might take some myth busting and some reconditioning of the way that society and our culture has conditioned us to view birth, for example, so that we can shift our perspective, soften into a new experience, and therefore have a new experience. I, as a result of coming into 12-step very early in my life and having things not work a certain way and create enough friction and manifest in a very problematic way in my life, I was pushed into this place of needing to seek this path of surrender. And it wasn't something that I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy that process. It was very uncomfortable. And I had to get very uncomfortable in order to be willing to shift and become receptive to doing differently and seeing differently. But as a result of being introduced to this concept very early on through 12-step mainly, I started to really grapple with this idea and try and wrap my mind around it. And once I am a formula person, like I love a good formula. Once I know the formula, I'm like I can just like lock it in and I can apply, of course, anything can be applied to that. It's like a good algebra 2 equation. Like it doesn't matter what the numbers are. You know the formula. You are guaranteed the right answer. Like, yes, that's a straight A once you know that formula, right? And I was not a straight A student. My learning curve with this algebra 2 situation, by the way, was like not easy. My teacher, praise God for this beautiful teacher. She said, I think I can help your daughter. She sat down with me and helped me understand. Once I understood, I was the top of my class just for that semester, only while I tutored, because I really needed that level of understanding and comprehension in order to be able to take that action. So once I figured out this formula for success, where I was able to start to surrender in the small things, even though they felt like very big things, they were really at the time monumental because it was a new pattern that I was creating. And I had results, I had success where I'm like, well, hold on a second. I just got a great result. That was pretty magical. And I didn't have to overexert and waste my energy and cause all sorts of disturbance and frustration within myself like had been previously doing. I was like, all right, I got this. Thanks, surrender. I'm glad you're there if I need you, and I'll be sure to call on you when my way stops working again. And so I really viewed it for a long time as like sort of use as needed when really pressed into a corner and couldn't handle it anymore. I have a much lower threshold now for this kind of dysfunction because I have a completely different baseline now. I have raised my baseline just through work and growing in awareness and experience with this stuff. Although, of course, there are still areas of my life where I'm not totally willing to let go. I might want to. And there are still areas in my life that have popped up and areas that do pop up currently where I'm like, I see where I'm not willing to let go here. There is a little gap that needs to be bridged. And I think as long as I'm human and alive, I'm probably always going to be challenged on this. And it's kind of like in a good yoga practice, in any sort of practice that takes physical endurance and strength building in order to progress, we have to continue to challenge ourselves. And, the amazing thing about this practice of surrender that is a very spiritual practice is that even if and when the body fails us, once we build this into our spiritual, into our musculature, and we're able to access and turn on this muscle and activate it at any time because of repetition, we're able to continue to strengthen and grow. And there's no bottom on it. There's no ceiling on it. It is an ever expansive concept that we can always deepen into and always expand into, because while the body is limiting, the spirit is ever expansive, as willing as we are anyways to expand and grow. That's a different kind of burn. That's the surrender burn. That is a different kind of burn, but it's sort of similar to like a muscle burn. So I was doing yoga this morning, and in the style that this woman teaches, it was somebody that I follow online because I like to do yoga on my own. She really likes to have you press into the burn of the stillness of a pose rather than like rushing through everything, which I personally really love because there's so much growth and strength building in that. And as I was doing it this morning, I was like, "Ooh, I felt tired." And ooh, this muscle started to burn. And what it does is it creates like this sort of panic in you. You're like, "I don't know if I can handle this." But that's just in the mind. That's just in the mind. And we're just moving into some territory that's uncomfortable. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that anything bad's going to happen in this moment. It just means we're going to get stronger. And in that process, we're going to feel uncomfortable for a minute. And then it's going to pass. And then you're immediately stronger. Like you will start to see the benefit of that straight away. And you've also integrated into your experience and consciousness that you are capable of that, which means you will know next time you are capable of that if you're willing to push through it. And so back to what I was saying, surrender, I used to really view it as an event. And it was very much an event for me, rather than a process, rather than a state of being. And through a series of events in my life, in deepening recovery and staying on this path, some things came up to challenge me, some things that had not been addressed, some layers that I had not gotten to. And when those things came up, I was invited by those things and that disturbance into a place of surrender. It was very much a dark night of the soul experience. And it was for a very unusually elongated period of time. It lasted for a number of years. I evolved, I grew. When I got past one thing, it was beautiful. And then I was immediately called into a deeper level. What it was doing, as much as I really did not enjoy it at the time, it was building an endurance and an understanding and conditioning me in a way that was bringing me results that I had been wanting, for so long, actually. And it was really an answer to a prayer. And of course, our prayers don't necessarily get answered the way we think would be best. They get answered in the way that they actually are best and going to most greatly benefit us. And the last little segment at that time in my life of this surrender period that I was being asked to really consistently press into was helping me to understand that it was a state of being rather than a single event or something or a tool to just utilize occasionally. I'll check back in with you when I need you. Thanks. Not that I do this perfectly. Because I'm not challenged in that way anymore, I moved into a reprieve with that particular thing that was very intense. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that reprieve. I appreciate that as a result of not having it. And I see where that work paid off now. But I don't know what's around the corner. And, life is a climb, and the spiritual path is a climb. And while we climb and we're challenged, we do get reprieves. And that's really important to understand, that these things pass, because we get to these little plateaus and we get to appreciate this beautiful view, and then we get to climb some more. Then we come along fellows along this path that maybe can encourage us, that are more experienced climbers than we are as we get higher and we're needing that support. Or maybe we are able to offer that encouragement or light to somebody else that we see is struggling as a result of our strength. And in that, we're connected and we lift each other up, and we keep going. And then, of course, like the benefit and the beauty of this incredible breathtaking view at the top, and being able to be present and aware and getting that higher vantage point and that clear understanding, feeling clear inside. So, when we stop filling ourselves with clutter, there's different analogies for this, like trying to fit a round or square peg in a round hole, or going to the hardware store trying to find bread and coming back empty-handed every time. Yeah, we have certain physical needs, and those physical needs are met by physical and material things. And when we need to nourish and fuel our body, we do so by eating something good quality that is going to nourish and fuel us in order to continue to have energy. If we want to continue to grow in purpose on our soul's journey and be in alignment with our true selves, then we have to nourish our souls, and we have to nourish our spirit, and we have to keep that flow moving through us. If we, based on our control and these illusions, go and try and change these things outside of us because we think they have to be different so we feel a certain way, then that's using things outside of us. Essentially, we're cluttering and we're obscuring that light, and we're blocking that flow through us, and how that would manifest in us as relates to our own particular spiritual disposition and gifting. And that's going to look a little different for everybody. That potential in us can't fully be realized, and will stay very much dim and asleep if we continue to clutter ourselves up. That's just my experience anyways, and that's how I've come to understand it. And so when I let go of those attachments to control, to these illusions, to needing to control circumstances or obtain certain things, that prevents me from surrendering and trusting that I'm going to have everything I need, that prevents me from really surrendering and trusting to move into a place of acceptance and receptivity with that, then I get freedom. I get freedom from the bondage of those things, because those things, those ideas, those behaviors, those things that I'm using are actually keeping me in bondage and creating a negative experience for me. So that could be freedom from pain. That could be freedom from struggle. So in the case of childbirth, for example, and birth is just the most perfect, beautiful metaphor for this. There is a process that we can trust with birth. Nature has it in hand, right? And so, when I come into awareness and I can understand what that process is, and I can let go, and I can release tension in my body, which comes after I let go of the fear that is causing me to hold on and control and be tense. And my body is relaxed, and my muscles can work beautifully, and I can allow this flow of natural chemicals, this natural cocktail of chemicals and endorphins that my body is releasing in order to bring me into a state of euphoria and peace in my birth. And then I can shift from being in a very tense, gripped by pain experience to having a painless experience. And there's all kinds of variations and lessons that we have to learn in our birth. So not all my births were painless, but some of them were. And it was to the degree that I totally let go. And anywhere that I didn't let go, it was just feedback for me to learn from for next time, of where I could let go more of the fear that came up in me, and to see where I could soften more. And then my experience was, in subsequent births, I was able to actually transform that experience by shifting the way I viewed it, and shifting my perception and what I was locked on to thinking was going to happen, and being open to a new experience. I was able to have a totally new experience. This is on a practical level. This is like a very tangible illustration to me of the benefit of surrender in birth, to be able to roll with it and move with the waves of the surges that are moving through your body to bring your baby down, rather than fighting against the current, resisting it, getting tense, thereby causing pain in your body. This letting go, this surrender, this relaxation is really the formula for success with anything, with creativity. Like, how creative and how are your ideas going to come to fruition and come to life if you're like overthinking something, and your brain is like a vice that's just like locked on to trying to control something? There's no room for creativity or inspiration to breathe and flow in that. So for somebody that is wanting to access more creativity and flow in that area of their life, that's really necessary and important. If it's the addict who's able to press into a new way of living where they stop trying to manage and control their problem, which clearly wasn't working, into a place of surrender and trusting and allowing and moving into a place of receptivity in order to have a spiritual experience and psychic change, in order to transform their being and their vibration and operate differently and get freedom from that bondage of what they were previously in bondage with. Or if that is the person on the other side who's trying desperately to help the addict, if it's a child, if it's a loved one, there's so much space created in surrender, in an allowance, in letting go of control and allowing that person to have what they have in order to create space for change. The change happens when we move the fuck out of the way and let the change happen. When we like scooch ourselves out of the way and allow for the change to organically unfold and happen. If it's us getting in the way of our own healing through through fixed ideas and our thought processes and letting go there, we can allow for an incredibly different experience. And this is where transformation starts to happen, and we can transcend these obstacles and these things that otherwise felt like unsolvable problems, but they're in fact not. It was a simple shift. So when we can start to learn and understand some of the dynamics and the things that are getting in the way, that can allow us to bridge this gap, that can help move us into really a new dimension of existence and experiencing life differently and interacting with life differently, it is incredible. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. Please stay tuned for announcements around offerings and classes on this particular subject. Mwah! Mwah! I love you guys. Until next time. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. For more information, resources, and exclusive content, visit our website at maybemindful.com, or go ahead and follow us over on Instagram at maybemindful. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please give me a follow, screenshot the episode, and go ahead and tag me until next week when I bring you another thought-provoking and inspiring topic. Until then,